Hi students, I welcome you all to Obstetrics and Gynecology with Makla. So in this module, we are going to discuss about the next important barrier contraceptive, that is the diaphragm. So to begin with the diaphragm, as you can see in this image, right? So diaphragm is basically a cup-shaped device, right? This cup-shaped device is comparable to the shape of a dome. So basically this is a dome-shaped cup which is having a flexible rim-like structure. Like if you can zoom here, you can see that it is having a flexible rim over here. So the major function of this flexible rim is that it is going to act like a spring, about which we'll be discussing further detail. But until now, you need to learn that diaphragm is basically a cup-shaped device which is shaped like a dome and it is having a flexible rim. Clear? Yes. And this diaphragm can be made and can be manufactured from the latex, rubber and from the silicone. So basically with these materials, this diaphragm can be made from. Clear? Yes. And similar to the other barrier contraceptive, the major function of this diaphragm as a barrier contraception is to act as a barrier against the direct insemination, which means during the act of coitus, the male partner is going to deposit the male gametes inside the female's internal genitalia, right? So the major process here is that you need to prevent the act of fertilization. Fertilization is the fusion of the male and the female gamete. So in order to prevent the fusion of the sperm and the ovum, there has to be some barrier, right? And the major function of this diaphragm is that it is going to act as a barrier between the male gamete and the female gamete. That is, it is going to act as a barrier against the direct insemination of the male gamete. Clear? Yes. And the size of this diaphragm, which has been most commonly used, prevalently used, is around 65 to 80 millimeter. Is that clear? 65 to 80 millimeter is the most commonly and very prevalently used diaphragm shape and size. Clear? Yes. And the diaphragm is actually going to fit obliquely in the vagina. As we know, as you can see here, the diaphragm, this is the diaphragm, okay? So this is the diaphragm and it is going to fit obliquely in the vagina, which is basically stretching from the pubic ramus to the posterior fornix of the vagina. So it is stretching actually from the pubic ramus to the posterior fornix of the vagina. So the diaphragm is going to be fitted obliquely in the vagina, stretching from the pubic ramus, behind the pubic ramus, to the posterior fornix of the vagina. So therefore this is going to cover the cervix as well. Clear? Now you will get a point clear that the major function of this flexible rim, which we discussed earlier, is to just flex it off and you are going to insert the diaphragm device obliquely inside the vagina, right? So just for that flexible function, this flexible rim which acts like a spring is given for this device. So this device is going to be fitted obliquely in the vagina, which is going to stretch from behind the pubic ramus until the posterior fornix of the vagina. Therefore it is going to cover the cervix as well. So when this device is going to be inserted inside the vagina, so if the male partner is going to deposit his semen, though this barrier contraceptive is going to prevent the deposition or the further ascent of the male gamete inside the female's internal genitalia. So therefore there is going to be no fertilization and no implantation, and therefore the couple is prevented from conception. Is that clear? So it acts as a barrier contraceptive. That is the major function of this diaphragm. But the most important point here is that it need to be used in conjunction with the spermicidal agents. So you cannot use diaphragm as such. So similar to the male condom and the female condom, you cannot insert this diaphragm as it is. You need to use certain spermicidal agent along with this diaphragm in order to increase the efficacy. Why? Because is that this diaphragm is not sperm proof, right? It is not sperm proof. So because of that reason, along with the diaphragm, you have to use some spermicidal agents, right? So the first important point we have learned here with respect to diaphragm is that you cannot use diaphragm alone. You need to use in conjunction with a spermicidal agent. Only then the efficacy of this barrier contraceptive will be proved. Clear? Yes. So now we'll be discussing about these spermicidal agents in detail, and then we will resume on to the diaphragm as such. Clear? Okay. So spermicidal agents are what? So basically we learned in the start that Barrier contraceptives can either be physical contraceptive, physical barrier contraceptive, and chemical barrier contraceptive. And spermicidal agents comes under the chemical barrier contraceptives, right? So spermicidal agents are nothing but chemical contraceptives that is going to cause destruction of the sperms before gaining its access inside the cervical canal. So, what do you mean by spermicidal? Sperm is the male gamete that we all know. What do you mean by cidal? Cidal is to kill. So basically, you're going to kill the sperm with the help of this spermicidal agent. So basically, it is a chemical that is going to cause destruction of the sperm before it is going to gain access inside the cervical canal. And the most important point here is that once you're going to use this spermicidal agent is going to be effective for about 1 to 2 hours after its application. So after the application of spermicidal agent, this spermicidal agent is going to be effective to kill these sperms before it gains its access into the cervical canal for 1 to 2 hours after the application. Is that clear? Yes. And the most important question here is the most commonly used spermicidal agent is nonoxynol 9. Right? Nonoxynol 9 is the most commonly used spermicidal agent. Now, coming to the mechanism of action by which this spermicidal agent is acting. So, the mechanism of action by which this spermicidal agent is acting is it is going to increase the permeability of the cell membrane of the sperm. So sperm is a structure, right? We have studied about the structure of sperms, right? So this sperm is going to have a cell membrane, and this spermicidal agent is going to increase the permeability of that cell membrane, right? So because of increase in permeability of the sperm's cell membrane, it is going to cause disruption of the lipid rich cell membrane. So increase in permeability of the cell membrane, which is going to lead to destruction of the lipid rich cell membrane. So once the membrane is going to be disrupted, therefore the motility of the sperm is going to be decreased and the sperm is going to become non-viable, right? The motility is also getting decreased, and at the same time the sperms are going to become non-motile. So basically can be termed that the spermicidal agents are acting as a surfactant. Yes, because the major function of this spermicidal agent is that it is going to act as a surfactant, and whatever sperm is going to enter inside the female's internal genitalia, these sperms are going to increase the permeability of its cell membrane, and it is going to cause disruption of the lipid rich cell membrane, leading to decrease in the motility, and it will make the sperm non-viable. So this spermicidal agent is acting as a surfactant here. And these spermicidal agents are available as jellies, creams, and suppositories. So suppositories are those agents which are inserted rectally, right? Yes, we all know that. But here, what are you going to do here is that you are going to insert this suppository inside the vaginal canal. So these are available in terms of creams, jellies, and suppositories. But one thing which you need to learn here is, if you're going to use this spermicidal agent in the form of suppository, you have to leave at least 20 to 30 minutes gap before the act of coitus. Why? Because it's that once you're going to insert the suppository inside the vagina, you need to buy some time to disperse the spermicidal agent inside the vagina. So the suppository actually need to disperse inside the vagina to be even more effective. So in order to gain its effectiveness, after insertion of the suppository, you need to give some time for at least 20 to 30 minutes to allow the suppository to disperse inside the vagina. Is that clear? Yes. But since it has so much of advantages, definitely it comes with its disadvantages as well, right? So the disadvantage of this spermicidal agent is that it does not protect against transmission of HIV infection. So we learned in male condom and female condom that it is going to prevent the transmission and it is going to protect from sexually transmitted diseases. But spermicidal agents does not protect against the transmission of HIV. So this is the second important point which I want you to remember with respect to diaphragm. It does not protect against the transmission of HIV. And the second important point is that the spermicidal agent is going to decrease the lactobacilli. So lactobacilli are the inhabitant bacilli which are normally present in the vagina, right? But this spermicidal agents are going to cause decrease in the lactobacilli, and it is going to increase risk of bacterial colonization. So all the harmful bacteria are going to get colonized inside the vagina. Since there is going to be increased bacterial colonization risk, therefore the patient is at increased risk of urinary tract infections, like which we discussed early in the earlier module, right? Spermicidal agents are going to result in increased risk of bacterial colonization, which later can ascend up and lead to urinary tract infections. Clear? Yes. And the third important disadvantage is that if you're going to use this diaphragm over a longer period of time, let's say for example a chronic usage of diaphragm is present in some patient, it may lead to some sort of irritation, and there might be some abrasions in her vagina. In the cervix there might be erosions being present, and it might lead to vaginal ulceration in the long go, right? So these are the disadvantages with respect to the spermicidal agents. What is the failure rate of spermicidal agents? So the failure rate of spermicidal agent is 15 to 25% per 100 women years, right? So 15 to 25 per 100 women years are the failure rate for spermicidal agents. Is that clear? So the most important disadvantage is that it does not protect against the transmission of HIV, and it is going to increase the risk of UTI, and chronic usage of this spermicidal agents can also lead to irritation, abrasion, and certain vaginal ulceration and cervical erosions as well. Clear? Yes. So now we are resuming with the diaphragm. So in the first rule that we discussed about the diaphragm is that diaphragm needs to be used in conjunction with a spermicidal agent, because diaphragm is not sperm proof. Okay, now the second point is that the intending couple has to consult a clinician and confirm the size and shape of the diaphragm, and they have to learn how to insert it inside the how to insert it inside the internal genitalia of the female before having the act of coitus. So all these things have to be learned before inserting the diaphragm, right? So they need to they need to consult the clinician, they need to confirm the size and the shape of the diaphragm, right? So because the size and the shape of the diaphragm is very important in order to have a very great efficacy of this diaphragm being planned, right? Can you understand it? See, the size and the shape of the diaphragm is very important when it comes to the success rate of the diaphragm. That too very particularly after the childbirth, when the uterus is going to involute and the cervix, which was 10 centimeter dilated during the delivery of the fetus, right? After delivery, it will take some time for the uterus and the cervix to involute to its normal position. So we cannot be very sure that this particular size of diaphragm is going to suit for this particular female. So therefore, you need to ascertain the particular size of the diaphragm, shape of the diaphragm, and then you need to prescribe it to the intending couple. And after insertion, the couple has to review every 6 months or say. So they should not leave it as such, and they have to come to you for every 6 months and have a review with you that whether there is any discomfort, any irritation, any vaginal ulcerations are present, any cervical erosions are present. The intending couple has to come for a review every 6 months. Now, you may have a doubt that you told me that male condom can be used maximum only one time and female condom can be used maximum only for 2 times. What about the diaphragm? So, diaphragm can be used till 1 year, right? Diaphragm can be used till 1 year. You can just wash it after the act of coitus and you can dry it and you can use it in the next subsequent day while you're going to have the act of coitus. So for a period of 1 year, you can just wash it off and dry it and you can reuse this diaphragm for a period of about 1 year. But what is the maximum wear time of this diaphragm? So on a daily basis, if a female is going to have coitus with her partner, she can wear this for 24 hours, that is 1 day. So for one particular day, she can wear this diaphragm inside her internal genitalia. So the maximum use time is 1 year and the maximum wear time is 24 hours. Right? Now you may have a doubt that similar to the male and the female condom, how am I going to wear this diaphragm before the act of coitus, and when am I supposed to remove this diaphragm after having the act of coitus? So, maximum insertion time before the act of coitus is 6 hours. So, even before 6 hours before the act of coitus, the female can insert this diaphragm inside her vagina. And how about the maximum time after which she has to remove it? That is, she have to leave about 6 hours after having the act of coitus, and after 6 hours of having coitus, she can remove the diaphragm, wash it, dry it off, and she can just keep it for the next day usage. So is that clear? So the maximum time where she can insert it inside her vagina before having the act of coitus is 6 hours before the act of coitus. She can insert it inside her vagina. And what is the maximum time? It should be left in its position after the act of coitus. After the act of coitus, it has to be left in its position for about 6 hours in order to prove its efficacy. Only after 6 hours of having coitus, she can remove it and wash it off, dry it, and you can store it. Is that clear? So 6 hours before the act of coitus you can insert, 6 hours after the act of coitus you have to remove it. And the maximum use time is 1 year, and the maximum wear time is 24 hours. Is that very clear for you? These are very important questions. You cannot do any blunder mistakes here. You have to just remember this. Clear? Yes. Now coming to the disadvantage of diaphragm. The disadvantage of diaphragm is that it does not protect against sexually transmitted infections. So diaphragm is not protecting you against any sexually transmitted infection, because as you can think here, in contrary to the male and the female condom, this is not similar to the male and the female condom, right? The male and the female condom is different from this diaphragm, right? So this diaphragm, which is not even sperm proof, you need to use it with a spermicidal agent, and spermicidal agent as such in it itself is not protecting you from sexually transmitted infection, and in the same way the diaphragm does not protect against the sexually transmitted infection. Why? Because is that when the male is going to have coitus with his partner, right, he's going to deposit the semen inside her vagina. But this diaphragm is positioned only from behind the pubic ramus to the posterior fornix of the vagina. So if he is going to introduce the male gamete inside the vagina, if he is going to have coitus with her female partner, then definitely you cannot prevent the risk of sexually transmitted infection, because the act of coitus is normal as such. But only the barrier contraceptive here is the diaphragm is going to prevent the further ascent of the sperm. It is not preventing the deposit of sperm, but then it is preventing the further ascent of the sperm inside the uterine cavity. So therefore, if they are going to have act of coitus, they can't be protected from sexually transmitted infection. But then, due to the presence of the diaphragm at the level from behind the pubic ramus to the posterior fornix of the vagina, the further ascent of this sexually transmitted infection, which might lead to pelvic inflammatory disease, can be prevented. Is that very clear for you? Please remember, sexually transmitted infection cannot be prevented, but then the further ascent of the sexually transmitted infection, which might lead to pelvic inflammatory disease, can be prevented because of this barrier contraceptive diaphragm. Is that clear? Yes. And long-term usage might lead to toxic shock syndrome, right? Long-term usage might lead to toxic shock syndrome due to staphylococcal pyogenic toxin. So because of this staphylococcal pyogenic toxin, there is going to be a cytokine storm which might lead to toxic shock syndrome when used in a long-term chronic usage. Is that clear? Yes. And now coming back to the contraindications of diaphragm. So in which group of female you're not going to use this diaphragm? Those female who is having prolapse of the uterus, who is having vaginal prolapse such as rectocele and cystocele, you're not going to insert this diaphragm, because always you have to ensure proper fitting of this diaphragm in order to maintain its efficacy, right? If it is not properly fitted, there are increased chances of failure of this diaphragm, where the sperm might gain access inside the cervical canal, and it might access further up, and it might result in fertilization and implantation inside the uterine cavity. So therefore you have to ensure that it is properly fitted. But in patients of prolapse and vaginal prolapse, you cannot properly fit it inside the internal genitalia. So for that reason, In patients of prolapsed cystocele and rectocele, you cannot use diaphragm. And in those patients who have allergy to latex and rubber, these are the materials from which the diaphragm is actually made from. In those patients who are allergic to rubber and latex, you cannot use this diaphragm. And in those patients who are having recurrent urinary tract infections, you cannot use. Why? Because you have to use diaphragm with spermicidal agent, and spermicidal agent can lead to colonization of the harmful bacteria, which will lead to UTI. So it is going to even aggravate and worsen the existing UTI infection. So in patients of recurrent urinary tract infection, you cannot use this diaphragm. And in those patients who are having cervical erosions as such, you cannot use this diaphragm, because in long term it might lead to erosions and ulcerations, which might lead to friction, rubs, and it might develop into cancer as well, right? So in patients of cervical erosions also, you cannot use this diaphragm. And those patients who have retroverted uterus, so retroverted uterus in conditions like endometriosis, where it is fixed retroverted uterus, in those patients also you cannot insert this diaphragm, because for insertion of diaphragm it has to be ensured that it is inserted in a proper way, that it is fitted inside. So proper fitting of this diaphragm is very important in order to gain the success rate of this diaphragm, or else it might lead to failure of this barrier contraceptive, where the couple might end up in conception. Clear? Yes. Now the failure rate of this diaphragm is between 4 to 6 per 100 women years. So spermicidal agent, the failure rate is 15 to 25%, right? But here the failure rate of this diaphragm is 4 to 6 per 100 women years. So out of the 100 women years, out of the 100 women who have used this diaphragm as a barrier contraceptive, about 4 to 6 women ended up in conception. So when compared to the male and the female condom, diaphragm has comparatively lesser failure rate when compared to those barrier contraceptive, right? And this failure is also due to non-compliance and poor fitting. So non-compliance is a very important disadvantage, where you need to be very strongly motivated and you have to be very compliant to just insert it properly and ensure that it has been properly fitted inside the internal genitalia, or else there are increased chances of failure of this barrier contraceptive. Clear? Yes. So whatever we have discussed until now is all about the diaphragm in detail. Is that clear? So we haven't left any single point, which is very important. We have discussed everything in detail about the diaphragm. Now I have a very important question for you. So this question was asked as a macular solve 3 days back, right? So now we are going to discuss that question here. So the question was, a 25-year-old primi gravida, she came by 14 weeks of gestation for medical termination of pregnancy, right? So by 14th week of gestation, that is in the second trimester, she came for medical termination of pregnancy. And medical termination of pregnancy has been done and the products have been evacuated. And check scan was done, which shows no retained product of conception. So therefore, there is no retained product of conception in her uterus. Now the female inquires you about contraception, as she wants to take contraception now for the next 2 years. So the female is asking you that, doctor, I need to have a contraceptive which I'm going to use it for the next 2 years, as I'm not planning for any baby for the next 2 years. So she is asking for one particular contraceptive which is going to be effective for the next 2 years, and she wants to have it as a contraceptive agent. The question here is that, which among the following contraceptive agent cannot be used in this female? So what are the contraceptives which can be allowed in this female? So as you can see in the options, etonorgestrel implant, levonorgestrel containing intrauterine device, diaphragm, and depot medroxyprogesterone acetate injections. So out of the 4 options, which contraceptive cannot be used in this female? Implant, which is a very small device which is going to release the hormone, which can be implanted in the arm of the female. Yes, it can be implanted in this female after the abortion also. It can be implanted. There is no risk, right? So yes, it can be implanted. Levonorgestrel containing intrauterine device. Yes, you can very well insert it because there is no retained product of conception inside, right? You can insert this levonorgestrel IUD also. Depot medroxyprogesterone acetate progesterone injection, yes, very well you can get the injection being done. And what about the rest option, which is diaphragm? So diaphragm is the answer the diaphragm cannot be inserted in this particular female. Now you may have a doubt why. The answer to this question is that diaphragm cannot be inserted in this female because, as we have discussed earlier, for the proper success rate of this barrier contraceptive, you need to ensure that it is properly fitted inside the internal genitalia. And we all know that after abortion, right, after abortion, which means that she has been pregnant earlier, right, only because if she is pregnant, she is going to end up in abortion, right? So abortion has been done. So now the uterus as well as the cervix has to involute back to its normal size. So you cannot expect to be in its normal size. So since it is in a stage of involution, you cannot insert this diaphragm, because once it is not properly fitted, then it is going to result in failure of the barrier contraceptive. So because of proper fittage not possible in this female immediately after the abortion, so therefore diaphragm is the answer, that diaphragm cannot be used as a contraceptive agent in this female, as she is a case of immediately after abortion, right? So immediately after abortion, which contraceptive cannot be used is diaphragm cannot be used as a contraceptive agent immediately after the abortion. Whereas the levonorgestrel containing IUD can be inserted inside the uterine cavity, because there is no retained product of conception inside the uterine cavity. So very well, after evacuating the product of conception, you can put a levonorgestrel containing intrauterine device, which is nothing but Mirena, inside the uterine cavity. But then diaphragm cannot be inserted, because for the insertion of diaphragm, it has to be ensured that it is properly fitted inside the internal genitalia. So therefore, immediately after the abortion, the one contraceptive which cannot be inserted in the female is the diaphragm. Is that clear? Yes. So whatever we have discussed now is all about the diaphragm as a barrier contraceptive. So in case if you have any doubt with respect to this diaphragm, you can just write to me in the Gmail Mackler handle. I will reach out to you as early as may possible.